I'm Christy Bishop, and you're listening to the What Nobody Tells Us podcast. Each week, I'll be exploring a topic that's often stigmatized, misunderstood, or simply left unaddressed. And we're going to be shedding light on the things that nobody tells us, but that everyone should know. Let's get started. Today's episode is on something called the Akashic Records. Now, you may have no idea what that is because I had no clue what the Akashic Records were. I've heard of them. It's one of those things where you're like, I think I've heard of it, but if asked in any way of depth, like what is it? Can you explain it? Like the answer is a hard no. So, I've done episodes on all sorts of woo-woo things because I've mentioned several times in the past. There's so many things we don't know. There are so many things that we cannot explain, and the world and the universe are so much bigger than any one of us tiny little humans, and the things that we believe and things that we don't believe and things that we decide are the be all end all when they're just certainly not. At least that's my opinion. So, I've done episodes on Reiki, I've done episodes on numerology, on astrology, on horoscopes. And today we're adding to the list Akashic Records. Now, my guest is by the name of Karen Wilson. Karen, ironically, many years ago, lost her husband. He was very young. He was in his 30s to a out of nowhere acute brain tumor. And that really, it was obviously that resonates with me a ton given Brian's, struggle with brain cancer. But that really started the process of her reevaluating and asking bigger questions in her life around what is the point of this? What is the meaning? What am I meant to be doing here given this tragedy and this loss? And one of the things that came up for her was this notion of a healing journey and the ability to start seeing different types of colors and start to feel different types of energy. And I feel I've heard recurring things from people, particularly healers over the years, that when something really traumatic happens in their life, it almost opens themselves up and their senses and abilities up to start to have these different types of energy and broader perspectives start to flow through them. And that's essentially what happened with Karen. Then she received training from an Akashic Records master, which she talks about. And the Akashic Records, for lack of any other detailed explanation, is essentially like the library to your soul and your life and your entire history as far as it goes back, not just on this earth, but literally forever. And so to tap into the Akashic Records really can provide people with a lot of answers to questions that they specifically have around their life, around their future, around issues that they might be facing around a business, a home, an animal, like a pet, all sorts of everything. So again, adding this to the woo, and you can believe in it, you cannot believe in it, but it helps people. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters. And my guest, Karen, is a true delight. She has been through some serious things in her life, and this healing and the ability to offer healing and energy work and Akashic record readings to others means the world to her. And she's based in Texas, and we had a reading of our own. And there are some really interesting themes that came up for me that I hadn't thought about, but given I'm in a huge pivot point in my career, it is fascinating to kind of see what came up around the now and the future. And there's no reason at that point in time she should have had any idea what I was going through. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy this conversation with Karen Wilson on the Akashic Records. Hi, Karen. Welcome to What Nobody Tells Us.
Hi, Christy. It's so great to be with you today. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. This is a topic that a lot of people, I think, haven't heard of. And when I first heard of it from our mutual friend, I was like, I feel like I maybe have heard of Akashic Records, but I know absolutely nothing about them. And then she was like, you need to talk to Karen. So we did. And I'm thrilled to have you here to talk all about it, as well as your healing journey too.
Great. That's awesome.
Can you we're going to get into Akashic Records in a second, but I want to set the stage. I want to set the table first. So can you talk a little bit about your background and, any experiences that kind of opened up the door to you discovering your abilities to do energy healings and ultimately Akashic record readings?
Okay. Well, Actually, my background is that, I didn't grow up with a psychic grandmother or something like that. I had a very sort of ordinary upbringing. I grew up in Canada in a small town. I went through the regular lifetime check marks where I, went to college, got married, had a child, and so I was always, slightly interested in esoteric topics. But just in the time that I grew up and where I grew up, there really wasn't much going on in that area. So I
Hmm.
didn't really dive into it too much. What happened for me was I had a tragedy happen in my life. My first husband passed away with a brain tumor, and after that happened, I just started asking some questions. Actually, while he was ill as well, we did a little bit of research into, the mind body spirit connection.
Hmm.
And after he passed away, of course, I was heartbroken. And I really just started asking some questions of the universe, like, where are we? What is this? I mean, he had been a very healthy, strong man. He passed away when he was 35, and he'd really never even been sick before he got the cancer. So I was just really, just seeking and asking questions, and that sort of catapulted me into this journey of exploring more about the universe and the I just like to call it the nature of reality.
Yeah. I had a very similar experience. As you know, my husband has been battling brain cancer for the past almost 50, actually, next month will be 15 years since his diagnosis. And he was given a very grim prognosis of 6 months. But I've realized over the past few years, it's in a similar way really driven me to try to figure out and go deeper in so many ways, and discover things about myself and about him and about our family as we raise our 7.5-year-old daughter, and kind of looking at this larger universe perspective. Um,
Yes.
and I recommend anyone do that. Right? It's so important. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have to go down the like energy healer path. Certainly not. It's not for everyone. But just to
Right.
start to understand more and get some answers.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Because there's so much more out there to discover. And if we sort of raise our head and look around, there's just so much. And now there's so much information out there on the internet. I really got most of my information in the early days from reading, but there's
Yeah.
just so much out there now. And if you look, if you seek, you will find.
Exactly right. When did you discover through this journey of kind of exploration, um, an energy sensitivity?
Well, I actually discovered that after my husband passed away. I asked him for some sort of a sign
Mm,
that he was okay. At that moment in my life, I had been brought up in, the Episcopal Church, and my ideas of spirituality were very sort of mainstream. But I just really wanted to know, like, are you okay? Like, is it what happened? Where did you go?
yeah.
And, I said, like, don't show up in the bedroom. I don't want to be scared, but is there some way you can just send me a sign? And I started feeling energy in my body. And it was just like sort of a vibration that came into my body. And I just knew that it was him. And then after that, after some time went on, I realized I was, I could start to see colors in odd places. I started to feel energy from other people. It was just this energy that would come, that I would just notice it in my body.
Wow, that's so interesting. Um, when you notice that you're able to like see energy, does that include like seeing auras from people?
I don't see auras, and I never really have.
Okay.
A lot of times, what I notice with my students, and that, like, seeing colors, often with your eyes closed, is one of the first signs that you're starting to develop your clairvoyant ability.
Oh,
But a
interesting.
lot of times, most times, clairvoyants really just see inside their mind. They don't really see outside,
Yeah.
although some people do. But for the most part, when people say I see a vision or I see something, they're usually seeing it inside their head.
Oh, that's interesting. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
Was there a
Yeah.
pivotal moment when you decided, I'm going to follow down this energy path and really explore pivoting in terms of a career, and embracing your role as an energy healer itself?
Well, I had for a number of years after my husband died. I mean, I didn't become an energy healer. My daughter was 6 years old when he passed away, just turned
Mm,
6, and it wasn't until she went off to college that I actually took my first Reiki class.
mm,
And so, but during those years, I was on a a trajectory of discovery. I feel like I almost gave myself a college education on, spiritual, different spiritual subjects, because I just seemed to be driven to read and explore. But it really wasn't until after she left for college that I felt sort of that it was my time to explore a little more for myself. I had been working in a pretty stressful corporate job during
Mm,
those years. And I just decided that I was you take a couple classes. I really enjoyed it. I could feel the energy coming through my hand. And then through like a set of circumstances that I didn't expect, my job in the corporate world sort of faded out. And I
mm,
was quite horrified about that at the time. I didn't really know like what I was going to do about that. And it just turned out that I started opening the Reiki practice. I
mm,
had some unexpected financial support come in from the universe just at the right
mhm.
moment. And I just started with the energy healing practice.
Wow. Isn't that funny how that happens?
Yeah, it really is. It
You just
really
don't
is.
like you get nervous about something going wrong, but it turns out it's actually going right in the broader
Yes.
perspective.
That's really true. I mean, I think that's something that I really, when I teach Reiki now, I always tell the story because I really want people to know that we have so many twists and turns in our lives that come
Mhm.
up. And at the time we're twisting and turning, we quite horrified. I mean, about what's happening in our life. We're losing things that we didn't necessarily want to lose. And then all of a sudden, different doors open. And
Mhm.
I feel at times it's like the universe sort of pushing us along saying, no, no, you're meant for something else. This you're not. I would never have quit that job. It was a very good job. it,
Mm.
it was very stressful, but it was a very good job. I was able to work from home. And so I don't think I would have ever quit it. And so it just the universe sort of pushes you along.
It does. It really does. How did you start to initially find your Reiki clients when you opened that business?
Well, I started my business in 2013.
Mm,
Facebook was around, I think. I can't really remember, but it wasn't really as big. I just put cards out at the local coffee shop.
mm,
I worked on my friends. And then, it started off word of mouth. It started off one client at a time.
mhm,
And then, Facebook came along. That was a little easier. And what really helped me, the way that I normally find my clients is through a Google search or
mm.
through word of mouth and through word of mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's funny. It's like no matter how big your business gets, word of mouth is, and reputation is everything. It really is.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So at what
Yes.
point in time did you start to I don't even I may not even be asking this the right way. When did you start to get an interest in, or was it introduced to you in terms of Akashic records? Like where did that come into your story?
Well, so I started my energy healing practice in 2013. And I think in 2014, a lady came to my city to a friend's house, and she was teaching the Linda Howe method of Akashic Record. And
Mm,
Linda Howe's a very famous Akashic Record teacher. And if anyone's interested in Akashic Records, one thing that they can do is get the ebook, the audio book of Linda Howe's book, Akashic Records, and just listen to the book as if it's a class.
mhm,
I actually had an in person class from one of her instructors. And it was, a weekend class, and it was very interesting. So and then I I really didn't do anything with it at that point, and that's because in my energy healing practice, I am a clairvoyant. I discovered that over some time, where when I work on in someone's energy field, I see visions. So I'll see visions of their, you know, I'll see usually their metaphors, but I'll
mm,
just see visions that can help them on their journey. But I'm seeing a vision for them; they're not asking me a question. So it's much different when someone's actually asking you a question that you have to answer. There's a
sure.
lot more responsibility there. So even though I learned a method of getting into the Akashic records, I didn't practice it right away because I was just nervous about it.
Yeah.
And then a number of years later, I was getting Akashic record readings from an amazing reader. Her name is Amory Pizzaro, and
Mhm,
I want to give her a shout out. Her website is bodyenergyconnection.com.
mhm,
She teaches, if anyone's looking to learn Akashic records, she's an amazing teacher. And I had had a number of readings from her over the years, and
mm,
then I decided to take her class. And she sets up a container that's very sacred, that's very just very special, and there's a lot of opportunity for practice. So
mm,
it's really practice, and that's really the same with any work that you get good at. the more you practice, the more you lose your fear,
Mm-hmm.
and the more you drop your barriers, the more you trust yourself. And that's really the answer into getting into this type of work. Is the answers are within you, your abilities are within you, but you have to trust yourself and you have to drop your fear.
Yeah. So let's go back to basics for a second. What are the Akashic records?
So I feel in a way like the Akashic records are a little bit misnamed, and it's a little, that's just my personal opinion. So people say that the Akashic records is this library. So people sort of think of this library in the sky, and there's a book there with your name on it.
Mm-hmm.
And in that book is all of your lifetimes, every thought you've ever thought. It's the story of you
Mm.
in the past, in the present, and in the future. So people like to think of it as a library, and that this library is um, looked after by what we call the masters teachers, your masters teachers and loved ones, or the lords of the Akashic records. So they're really like the librarians in the sky, which is a very sort of interesting thing, because I have a master's degree in library science and I worked for many, many years in the corporate and government library world. So I just find that sort of funny. But but to me, it really is connected with these masters, teachers, and loved ones who step forward to answer the questions of the person.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people, I think, get confused about the Akashic records, where they think if they get an Akashic record reading, what they're going to get is a reading of a dump of their past lives. But
Oh.
that's not really true, because that wouldn't really serve you if you didn't. The helpful part of the Akashic record reading is that you're getting more of a higher level insight into your life now, using the information from your Akashic records. But it's not just a dump of your past lifetimes. Your past lives can come in a reading if it serves you,
Mm.
if it's going to be of service to you in this lifetime. But
Mm-hmm.
just to sort of boost your ego by telling you, oh, you're a king or a queen or whatever in a past lifetime, is not really helpful for you now.
Right.
So it's whatever is going to be the most helpful.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Can you give an example of like take people through what an Akashic record reading entails? Like what do you do? What do they need to do? Like what does it look like?
Okay, so what I'm going to say now is how I do it and how I was trained to do it. People out there, maybe doing it in different ways, because there's different teachers and different aspects. But the way that I was taught to do it, the way Linda Howe and Anne-Marie Pizzaro teach, is that we go in through a prayer process.
Mm.
So we use a prayer to drop in. So we're dropping into our heart space. So we're moving from the head to the heart.
Mm-hmm.
So the reader's doing this, but the reader's also encouraging the client to do that as well. So you drop in from your head to your heart. You say a prayer. You ask for the masters, teachers, and loved ones. First of all, you have to ask permission of the person that you're reading for. So you could, like, I could not do like a reading for your sister for
Mm-hmm.
you, right? It has to be for you, and it
Yeah.
has to be for an adult, not for a child. So now you can get information from a child if it's the mother's or the father's asking a little bit about the child, but we have to have permission. That's really important in spiritual work, to ask permission.
Yeah.
And so then during this prayer process, after that, then I'll just spend a little bit of time just sort of what we call dropping into the records, just being quiet, dropping in. And then when I come out of that, I usually start with a vision, because I am clairvoyant. So that's the easiest way for me to receive information. Other readers will receive information from the records as they're, pertaining to their gifts and how they best receive spiritual information. But for me, I usually get um, um, a vision that's
Mm-hmm.
usually a metaphor. So it's like, maybe someone jumping on a trampoline, riding a bike down a road. There's you can go this way or that way. So that's the way that it works for me. And that usually always connects with the client in some way, so that I usually ask, does this resonate with you? And sometimes, especially when I first started reading, I would go, oh, geez, like, I hope this does resonate, because I just told her, a vision about three clowns or something like that. So they usually always say, oh my God, that's my life. That's exactly my life. So that sort of sets the stage, and then we jump in there with their questions. So the Akashic record readings are based on questions.
Mm.
It's not a dump of information, because we're looking at the whole Akashic field of the person. So that's way too much information. And there's information in there that the person may not really want to know. at
Mm,
this point in time. It may not be for their highest good. So
mm.
we always want to work for the client's highest good. So, and ask for that. So we just start diving into their questions, and then the answers will come not from me. My job, and that's how one of the ways that we're trained, is to
Mm.
step aside and just sort of back up. I'm still here. I'm not in a trance, but just sort of back up and allow the answers to come through.
Hmm. What are some examples of questions that clients can ask?
So really, there's no question that's really off base. A lot of people ask questions about their relationships.
Mm,
Why don't I get along with my husband? My boss seems like he's always irritated with me. I'm thinking of moving cities. Should I move
mm,
from here or there? Um, things like sometimes they'll want to ask questions about their deceased relatives. My grandmother. I feel so sad when she passed. I feel like she's with me. Does she have anything that, she wants to say to me? Um, I don't do questions about health because I just feel very nervous about that. So
mm,
that's one of my, um, when I work with Anne-Marie Pizzero, she has a little bit more of a background in healthcare. So she does take questions on health, but I'm nervous about that.
yeah.
Some people ask questions about, their children. Why aren't their children doing well in school?
Mm,
Questions about their pets. It's really anything about your life. Some people do ask about past life questions, like they say, why am I so interested in music?
mm.
My husband and I, we're always fighting. What did we have a past life that could shed some light on that? So it's really questions about life and helping them see like an inner, more deeper. The answers that come through are a little bit deeper and richer and a little less expected sometimes than just a more regular psychic reading.
That's so interesting. I remember when we did it, there was definitely some surprises and some like really interesting insights that came through when you were channeling. And I'm wondering about some of your other clients as well, because I know that you said that you're not necessarily in a trance, but you're slightly removed. So, do you
Yes.
have any examples from clients around like any of the insights during their Akashic readings that have helped them in their daily life or in their personal growth journey?
Well, I do, and that's interesting you ask, and we had talked about this at the beginning. I had sort of had to ask them for some examples because I don't really remember the readings.
Mm,
I mean, I'm there and I'm present. I hear the reading, and often I will, chime in the reading. I'll say, "Oh, Karen will tell you about a book later," or "Let me will that sort of thing." Sometimes I do a little energy work at the end, but
hmm.
I don't do it while we're in the records because I'm not supposed to be, talking. But a lot of people have said that the readings have really been life changing, and that's because of I think the deepness of the information that comes out, and
Mm,
that's information that I think a lot of people know what they need to do, but they haven't really seen the perspective. So, for instance, if they have a problem with their sister, all they're seeing is their perspective. They're not seeing the sister's perspective. But when that becomes shown to them, then often they, drop their barriers, open up their love for their sister, and realize there's two sides to this coin. People have said things like, I've helped them, or not I have, but the record keepers have helped them set boundaries. Sometimes we go back into the childhood and see the record keepers will bring forth scenes from the childhood that
mm.
the person might have sort of forgotten, but when they go back there they realize how profound that moment in their childhood was. um, Help people with selling property and moving. Is it a good idea to do it now? Or and what's interesting with that is often the house itself. So you can do Akashic record readings for a person's house, the person's property, a person's
Oh, wow.
business, a person's pet. And so often the house itself. I remember doing a reading one time. Do remember this one, and they just couldn't sell the house. And the house itself was very put out because they were sort of leaving, and the house sort of thought there was just a husband and wife, and the house had given them so much happiness that the house almost felt like the house was part of the marriage in a way, in an energetic way. And the
Yeah.
house wanted some recognition of the beauty that and the beautiful times that that house had given them. And
Oh,
once that was, they were able to do that, talk to the house, walk. That's what I often say to people. If you're trying to sell your house or your business and it's not working, walk in the rooms, remember the good times, say thank you to that house for
mhm.
creating, that sort of thing. Um,
I love that actually. I mean, because it's like in numerology, homes, addresses have numerologies, right? And like master numbers too. So it's not dissimilar, but it's like we imbue so much energy into the places that we live, right? That they
yes,
almost do become part of they are part of our lives. They facilitate marriage or, rearing of a child, those types of things. So it makes sense
yes.
to, offer your gratitude to it
That's
and
true. And
appreciation.
it is that we do need the address of the house. And it has to be your house. So you can't do it for like your friend's house or whatever. It has to be all about you. So a lot of, like I said, a lot of information about relationships and relationship, dynamic,
Yeah.
helping people see what's really at play. Um, I've had some readings with people helping them understand the process of death and dying,
Oh,
and also actually the some deceased people will come in through the reading, and that's because we're dealing with the masters, teachers, and loved ones and your
okay.
ancestors. So oftentimes deceased loved ones will take an opportunity to come into a reading, and so that can be very healing for people because the
Sure.
personality often of the deceased loved one will appear
Yeah.
not really through me, but I will just describe, oh, I see a grandmother with her arm with an apron on with, she's got flour on her hands and her arms are wide open.
Mm.
And often I will feel emotion because I'll feel that emotion love between the deceased, grandmother or whatever and the person, and it can be very, very touching.
Oh, I'm sure.
Um and some readings on who we are in the past. I do work with a lot of my clientele seem to be what we call star seeds, people who have a very rich spiritual past. Sometimes some, and so some of that will come forth to help
Mm.
people see who they really are, because we're sort of in disguise here on earth. We don't really
Right.
know who we are at the soul level, at the spiritual level, and that helps give people confidence when they're able to see themselves in a bit of a different light, a stronger light, a more sort of light filled entity, as opposed to just someone who lost their job or whatever. But
Yeah.
who are you really? So we're
Yeah.
able to look at that a little bit.
It's interesting to think about like the relationships, of course. People are so curious about
Yes.
relationships, jobs, finances, those types of things. Do you find a lot of people, or have there been actually like shifts and trends around the questions that you've gotten over time since you started doing this? Is there more of a focus on like purpose now versus where it was before, like just making things up? But have you seen any trend shift?
I think it really depends. I really just depends on the client and where they're coming from.
Mm,
So I wouldn't say that I've seen that, because I've just had a variety of different types of clients,
yeah,
and they bring different types of questions. So people are at different stages in their life. There are different stages in their spiritual development. And
yeah,
so some people come in with just very sort of, basic everyday questions about their life and livelihood, their relationship with their kids and that. And then others come in with a lot, with some deeper questions on their nature of reality, on, who they are, who they were, what their life. A lot of people ask their life purpose, that sort
hmm.
of thing.
You mentioned, so you said, and may say this wrong, so I apologize. You have to correct me. You said it's their guides, the deceased loved ones, and was it angels? What are the three categories?
It's masters, teachers, and loved ones.
And how do those
Masters, teachers,
manifest
and
as
loved
they're
ones.
coming through to you? Are they all through metaphors, like you said, like visual metaphors, or like can you tell a difference between a type of message coming from a master versus one coming from a deceased loved one?
Well, the ones that are coming from the masters and teachers are normally, the what's mainly coming through. If it's a deceased loved one, it's usually when they're sort of invited in. So the
Ah,
way it works for me is that they're not sort of in the mix as much, although they could be in the background. So the answers that come forth in the reading, so they come forth from me talking.
yeah,
Sometimes I'll also pull a couple of oracle cards, just only if I'm guided to do so,
sure,
and because the oracle cards often have a visual picture, and so sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words, and
yeah,
so I'm guided to pull a couple cards to illustrate a situation.
right.
So. I would say for the most part, I feel like it's coming from the masters and teachers. That the loved ones are a little more, the specific loved ones are usually through invitation, but
Mm-hmm.
there's all sorts of masters that can come in. So for instance, if someone is a the scientist or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, then they'll have scientist guides come in
Mm.
to help answer the questions.
Oh,
So
interesting.
there's different types of guides that will come.
Right. You
People
mentioned
also,
oh, sorry, no, go ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that people often ask too, if they have any spirit guides around them, and often they will have a guide that is pertains to their expertise.
Really? That's I remember when we had our session, there were different pillars of expertise that were like showed up in the beginning. Like different, like 5 or 6 different pillars. Is that pretty typical for people? Like you see different pillars throughout their lives of the different areas of expertise that they'll dive into?
No, I think that would have been more specific to your reading,
Oh,
which I
interesting.
don't remember. Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned pets too, which I think is fascinating.
Yes.
So what do
Yes.
people ask about their pets or how does that manifest itself?
So the pets are really fascinating. So I do the pet reading as a little bit well, I'll do it in the Akashic record reading. I also do pet readings just as an aside sort of as well. If someone wants just a short pet reading, I do that. But the pets can come in as normal pets. So they can come in as dogs or cats. Like, um, I'll explain a little bit more because that sounds ridiculous. But so they'll come in, usually they'll sort of, I see them in my mind's eye, they'll sort of approach me. They usually approach in the way, pertaining to their personality. So often, the people ask questions like, why does he always cry when we leave? He seems like he's always looking out the back window.
Hmm.
He's not eating his food. Why is he always like that red blanket? That sort of thing. So the pets will just come through and answer those questions. But what's really interesting is that sometimes the pets will show up not looking like dogs or cats.
Hmm.
They'll show up looking like almost like galactic beings that are here from a different dimension that have come into a family to help heal that family. And those readings can be very interesting because those pets can be very opinionated. They'll say things like, well, she needs to stop watching TV and he needs to be home more. And so I get them going out on a walk every Saturday morning. Because sometimes they'll say, why does he pester us so much for a walk? Well,
Right.
that's why, because they need to get away from the TV. So the animal is not just really thinking about themselves, but they're thinking about their mission
That's
in
so
in the family.
I've never thought of that or heard that in my life. That's so fascinating. I did read something the other day around like pets, us having soul contracts with the life that we're meant to lead here, but also we have soul
Yes.
contracts with the pets that we have throughout our lifetime here.
Yes. Yeah, so the pets are very connected to the owners,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's really fascinating. It was eye opening for me too because I really didn't expect that. I would always see them in my mind's eye looking completely different than a regular cat,
Yeah.
and they might say they were from another planet, that they came in here specifically for this family, that they were more so like there's different um, frequencies that we all carry, and I guess it's the same for the pets.
Yeah. I love that. That's really touching
Yes.
to think about that with
Yeah.
with an animal that's like plays
Yeah.
such an important part in your life.
Yeah.
On the contrary side of all of this, I'm sure just with anything that's woo woo, I'll just generalize it like that. There's skeptics everywhere.
Yes.
So how do you address the skeptics, especially around a subject like Akashic Records, which is something that not a lot of people, as I mentioned, are familiar with.
I don't bother to address it with them. I mean, if people want to come for a reading with me, they can. If they don't, that's fine. I mean, I do have, that was something that I struggled with at the beginning
Mm,
about appearing to be crazy, appearing to be woo woo. I worried as well. I worked in the corporate world for 26 years.
right.
Like everybody else, I have high school friends and, friends I know from my university days. It's like, I did worry about that, but I had to really drop that. And so, people don't come to me for a reading if they're a skeptic because they were not going to spend money to come and just to feed their skepticism.
Right. I
So,
love that. You're not spending your energy trying to
and I also
debunk.
put out into the universe to send me, people who are a good match for me.
Yeah.
because I really don't want to. I work from my home. I just really don't want, well, I also work a lot on Zoom, but I just really don't have time for skeptics. I mean, it's just a waste of
Yeah.
my time and their time, because people have their own ideas, and I completely respect that.
Yeah.
Everyone has their own ideas about the nature of reality, and
Mhm.
we are all living in our own personal version of it. So whatever people want to believe is fine with them. I mean, I don't entertain it.
I love it.
If anyone were to, like, at a party, or when anything, if they were to say anything to me or poke fun at me or whatever, I would just smile and walk away.
Yeah. There,
It's just not worth it.
it's not worth it. It is. I could not agree more. It is not worth it. And you always get, like you said, you get sent the type of people and the frequency of people like who are open to this and who are looking for this type of
Yeah.
support. What other
Yeah.
types of do you combine like different energy healing methods? Like, do you combine an Akashic record reading with Reiki? Like, is there some sort of, I don't want to say package. That's not the right way to say it. But do you ever like practice multiple healing methods on people?
I have done that in the past. I am a Akashic record reader. I'm also an energy healer, and I spend a lot of time doing energy healing sessions. I do sometimes. I will depending on the needs of the client, especially if it's a client that I've worked with a number of times,
Hmm.
I'll open their records in the healing session. It's not something that I do a lot,
Mm,
because there's a whole process. There's a process to get into the healing session. There's a process to get into the Akashic records, and there's enough to do in each of them. So I only do that in special circumstances where I think it would really benefit the person, or in the situation.
yeah, that totally makes sense. Has there ever been a reading that you recall or have been told about afterwards that was especially challenging for you to deliver?
Do you mean challenging to deliver, or just challenging like in the aftermath?
Both.
Well, every reading is a little challenging to deliver. It's not anymore, because I've let so much of that fear go,
Mm,
and because the I don't work with my own I'm not really working with my own mind or my own thoughts. So
right.
it's not me. I just allow what's going to come in to come in. There was one point when I do energy healing work, I usually start off with a higher self reading. And that's just a reading that gives the client a little bit of indication of their higher self, which is, the higher self is like it's not like a guardian angel or anything like that. It's like you at your higher aspect.
Yeah.
So it's your really wise, funny self that's connected, kind self, that's connected more into the spiritual realm, as opposed to our more ego self, which is connected more into the third dimensional realm.
Hmm.
So I just allow myself to be open to that, and I just receive some images and some words that come through. And I remember one time a woman was lying on the table, and she whipped her head around, and she said, "How do you know that?" Because I was just explaining how she is at work, that she, tended to be this way or that way with their clients, and she expected this and expected that. And it was sort of a little bit of a detailed personality
Yeah.
explanation. And I was sort of startled, because I'm like, I don't know that. Like, Karen doesn't know that. It's coming in. I'm reading. That's what a reader does. They're not making stuff up. They're reading what's coming in,
Yeah.
and interpreting it, hopefully. So for a while, any type of reading that I did was challenging, but it was because of my own ego, my own fear, my own desire to not say anything that was out of turn, or not make anything up,
Right. Right.
because that doesn't serve anybody. So once I was able to, and that just took some practice and time, to drop a lot of that, and
Yeah.
just not think about it, and focus on just what was coming in. And it's sort of like a surgeon in a way, they're not thinking, what if I make a mistake? How do I do this? Once they've gotten good at it, they drop in and they do their work.
Yeah.
Um, so I did have one reading one time where the person had a lot of sort of a very difficult background, where they'd been through a lot of different things in their life, and extreme things. And after this, I don't think they'd ever had any work really done before to
Oh,
in any clearing work. And then after the clearing work, they became quite agitated because sometimes the energy healing can it's like it can be like a detox,
right.
especially if you've never worked on yourself at all or thought about your past or everything. And so
Yeah,
that was a little difficult. And then I believe that they did have, I think, a bit of a panic attack. I mean, it's this work can really open you up. So
yeah,
that was, I was challenging because I didn't my aim is to always leave with people feeling better. In
right.
fact, that was my tagline in the early days. Now my tagline is raise your frequency, but it used to be feel better.
Mm,
So I don't really want people to leave and feel worse.
of course.
So, but I think he was fine in the end. It was just sort of a tumultuous opening for him.
Yeah, I mean, think that's a really interesting thing. It's like if people have the way I've had it described to me in the past is just around energy healing in general. It's kind of like if you don't wash your car for years and years
Yeah,
and years, you think of, and it just sits there. I think of the muck that's on it, and it's like the same
yeah,
thing with your energy field. If you haven't
yeah,
cleared it or cut the cords or addressed it, the hygiene,
yeah,
spiritual hygiene, if you will, it can be really jarring for the first time. There's a lot of
yes,
gunk you got to get off of you.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that
right.
can be no fun at all. Is there anything that people, when we talk about the idea of like what nobody tells us, are there things that you can share that are around the idea that what nobody tells us about Akashic Records?
I think that it's just a very gentle way to explore the areas of your life where you want questions. I think a lot of people, when they think of an Akashic record reading, they think, "Oh, I don't want that because I don't want to know about my past lives. I don't believe in past lives." So it's not. It's the past lives can come in as part of it, but really, it's a record that's utilizing higher spiritual connection so that there's the energy, the information that comes in, and there's also an energy that comes in as well with the reading, an energy of healing that comes in, so that when they find out some answers. So, for instance, I had a woman, and she always, I don't want to get too much into the detail, but she always had a very sort of strange relationship with her father.
Hmm.
And whenever we explored the past life on that, it just made sense to her. It didn't mean that she enjoyed her relationship with her father anymore, but she understood it more. And so there was a lot that she could just let go so
Hmm.
that she could feel more free and understand why things were the way they were.
Yeah,
So when we have an understanding, or we see things from a different perspective, um, we have more tools that we can use to move into those relationships in different ways.
yeah. I think that that's beautiful. Even if it's a tough situation or tough
Yeah.
topic, it can be really beneficial at the end, without a doubt. One last question. How do you recommend that people, once they've had an Akashic record reading, incorporate the information into their life moving forward? Do you give them any advice at the end of the reading?
Well, sometimes the advice often is given throughout the reading
Yeah.
from the masters, teachers, and loved ones. I don't feel that I, as a person, am really qualified to give advice. Sometimes I will, though, give them like I do with my energy healing clients. I'll give them some books or some
Mm,
practices to do, maybe some space clearing practices, some books or websites to look at. Things like tapping or
mm,
meditation techniques, those types of things. So depending on what comes up in the session, I will give them, some tips and tricks to help them go through it. I also record the session, and I recommend that they give it a little bit of time.
mm.
Of course, they can listen to it whenever they want, but often people will come back to me later and say, "I just re-listened to that reading you did for me 2 years ago, and I couldn't believe all the things that because sometimes it's a lot. It's a lot to absorb.
Yeah,
So re-listening to the recording a few times, over a period of time, just to sort of integrate it and understand it a little bit more.
yeah.
Um,
Oh, that's
yeah,
great advice. Is it interesting? It's an interesting concept of like it's not you, it's channeling through you, but at the same time, if they want to support themselves with like space clearing and like energy clearing, that types of things, just to make sure that
yeah.
like if their own energy field and their understanding of themselves is better, then like you might as well improve their surroundings.
Yes, I have a whole file on my computer called client handouts with, maybe 100 different handouts. And so just depending on what people are needing, it's just some help with just some practical things on life, sort of things.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
If people wanted to get in touch with you to learn more about Akashic Records or your energy healing services, where is the best place for them to contact you?
Is my website is KarenWilsonHealing.com. KarenWilsonHealing.com, and all
And
the
everything's
information
there.
is there. Yeah, and you can schedule there as well. And I do in person. I'm in Corpus Christi, Texas, but I do also do a lot of work on Zoom and both Akashic. I do all my Akashic readings on Zoom, and I do distance healing from my healing room. I have a really great remote mic. So I do the healing, and a lot of the healing work I do, I'm utilizing instruments. So I do a lot of work with sound baths. So I have, a gong and a number of crystal bowls and rain stick and a harp and all that. So you also will get, a reading in the healing session. It won't be an Akashic record reading. So you won't be connecting with the masters, teachers, and loved ones. That's a separate sort of thing that happens in the Akashic reading.
Got it. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for sharing, kind of demystifying everything around Akashic Records and sharing, being vulnerable enough to share some of your background, some of the tougher and more beautiful moments of life and kind of where it's led you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Christy. It was really fun talking to you today. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you. Well, that's it. Another episode of What Nobody Tells Us. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you felt something. I hope you learned something, and I hope you feel empowered to go reach out to somebody who might be going through something you don't understand. Lean in, ask the questions, make the connection, be the friend who starts the conversation. I can't tell you how much it will mean to someone. If you have ideas for further topics, please reach out to me. I love hearing from you. Your emails and your tweets and your texts and your Instagram DMs are so welcome and so amazing. If you want to hear more, every episode is available on my website, christybishop.com. That's Christiebishop.com. You can find all previous episodes, and you can also book me for speaking engagements, for training, coaching, and marketing consulting. I've only been doing that for the last 20 plus years. It's one of my first loves. So again, thank you for listening. And until next time, I'm Christy Bishop, and this is What Nobody Tells Us.